Tonight, we're diving into 3 true stories from people who found themselves utterly alone, or so they thought. So turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare yourself. Our first story comes from a woman named Chloe, who was house-sitting for her parents in their sprawling, isolated home deep in the countryside. The first few nights were blissful. The silence of the woods was a welcome change from her noisy city apartment. She'd spend her evenings reading by the fire, the only sounds being the crackling logs and the occasional hoot of an owl. It was on the 3rd night that things began to feel off. It started subtly. A floorboard creaking upstairs when she was downstairs. The dog, a usually placid golden retriever named Buster, would suddenly perk up, staring intently at the top of the stairs, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Chloe brushed it off as the house settling. An old dog's quirks. The next night, she was in the kitchen making tea when she heard it. A distinct tapping sound. It wasn't coming from inside the house. It was coming from the large bay window that overlooked the dark, dense woods. Tap, tap, slow and deliberate. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Buster was on his feet, hackles raised, barking ferociously at the window. Chloe froze, her hand hovering over the kettle. She slowly peered over the counter, but all she could see was her own reflection in the dark glass. The tapping stopped as suddenly as it began. She told herself it was a branch, a bird, anything but a person. She drew all the curtains, locked all the doors again, and spent the rest of the night huddled on the sofa with Buster, jumping at every creak and groan of the old house. The final night was the worst. She was getting ready for bed, the house eerily quiet. As she walked past the hallway mirror, a flicker of movement in the reflection made her stop dead. Behind her, at the far end of the long, dark hall, she saw a figure. It was tall and silhouetted against the faint moonlight from a distant window. It was just standing there, perfectly still. For a terrifying second, their eyes, or where she imagined its eyes to be, seemed to lock in the reflection. Chloe didn't scream. She didn't even breathe. In a pure, instinctual panic, she bolted. She sprinted into her parents' bedroom, slammed the heavy oak door shut, and jammed a chair under the handle. She grabbed her phone, her hands shaking so violently she could barely dial 911. As she whispered to the dispatcher, she heard it. A slow, heavy footstep in the hall, then another. It was coming closer, closer. The footsteps stopped right outside her door. And then, a soft, shilling knock echoed through the room. Chloe held her breath, tears streaming down her face until the blessed sound of sirens pierced the night. The police found footprints around the house and pry marks on a back window. But the person was gone, vanished back into the woods as silently as they came. Chloe never stayed in that house alone again. Our second story takes us to a small, ground-floor apartment in a quiet suburban neighborhood. This comes from a college student named Liam. He was pulling an all-nighter studying for his final exams. His roommate was out of town, and the entire apartment complex was unusually quiet. It was around 2 a.m., and Liam was deeply focused on his textbook, surrounded by coffee cups and notes. He started hearing a faint, rhythmic scratching sound. At first, he ignored it, assuming it was a tree branch against the building. But the sound was persistent. Scratch, pause, scratch, pause. It sounded like it was coming from his wall, the one that bordered the outside walkway. Curiosity and a bit of annoyance got the better of him. He got up and pressed his ear against the cool drywall. The scratching was louder now, more frantic. It sounded like an animal, maybe a raccoon, trapped or trying to get in. Liam wasn't particularly scared, just concerned for whatever was out there. He decided to take a quick look. He crept to his living room window, which gave him a clear view of the walkway alongside his bedroom wall. He carefully parted the blinds, just a sliver, and peered out. What he saw made his blood run cold. It wasn't an animal. Crouched down on the pavement, right below his bedroom window, was a man. He was gaunt, dressed in ragged clothes, and he was clawing at the vinyl siding of the building with his bare, grimy fingernails. His head was down, his movements jerky and obsessive. Scratch, pause, scratch. Liam let the blinds fall back into place, his heart pounding in his throat. He backed away from the window, his mind racing. This wasn't a lost animal. This was something far more unpredictable and terrifying. He couldn't call the police and say a man was scratching his wall. What if he was just mentally unwell and harmless? But what if he wasn't? Liam spent the next hour frozen in his armchair, listening. The scratching continued, a relentless soundtrack to his fear. At one point, it stopped. The silence that followed was somehow even more terrifying. He waited, barely breathing, straining to hear any other sound, footsteps, a voice, anything. Then he heard a new sound, a soft, metallic jiggle. It was coming from his front door. Someone was trying the doorknob, gently at first, then more forcefully. Liam grabbed the heaviest thing he could find, a thick textbook on organic chemistry, and stood silently in the entryway, his back pressed against the wall. The doorknob rattled violently. He could hear faint, guttural muttering from the other side. Every horror movie scenario flashed through his mind. After what felt like an eternity, the rattling stopped. He heard shuffling footsteps, and then they faded away. Liam didn't sleep a wink. He sat there, clutching his textbook like a weapon, until the sun came up. He never saw the man again, but for the rest of the semester, he barricaded his door with a chair every single night. Our final true story tonight is from a truck driver named Rick, who has spent decades on the road. Driving at night is part of the job, and he's seen his fair share of strange things on the lonely highways of America. But one night, on a desolate stretch of road in rural Nevada, he experienced something that still haunts him. He was hours from the next town, surrounded by nothing but desert and stars. His radio was playing low, and he was sipping on a coffee to stay awake. That's when he saw her. In the beam of his headlights, a woman was standing on the shoulder of the road. She was wearing a simple white dress that seemed to glow in the darkness. She wasn't hitchhiking. She was just standing there, staring out into the desert. Rick slowed down, concerned. It was the middle of the night, miles from anywhere. Was her car broken down? Was she in trouble? As he got closer, he could see her more clearly. Her hair was long and dark, and her feet were bare on the rough asphalt. A chill went down his spine. Something felt profoundly wrong. He pulled his massive rig to a stop about 50 feet past her and looked in his side mirror. She hadn't moved. She hadn't even turned to look at his truck. She was still staring out into the blackness. Against his better judgment, Rick put the truck in reverse, planning to roll down his window and ask if she needed help. He reversed slowly, keeping his eyes glued to the mirror. But as he got closer, she was gone. She had simply vanished. The shoulder was empty. There was nowhere she could have gone. It was flat, open desert for miles in every direction. There were no bushes, no ditches, no other cars. Confused and more than a little spooked, Rick stopped the truck. He scanned the area with his high beams, sweeping the light across the empty landscape. Nothing. Not a footprint, not a trace. He told himself his eyes were playing tricks on him, a product of exhaustion and too much caffeine. Shaken, he put the truck back in gear and started to drive away. As he picked up speed, he glanced at his passenger side mirror, and his heart stopped. She was there. Not on the road, but reflected in the mirror, sitting in his passenger seat. He could see her clear as day, the white dress, the dark hair, her face pale and her eyes wide and empty. He whipped his head to the right, to the actual passenger seat next to him. It was empty. He looked back at the mirror. She was still there, staring back at him with that blank, haunting expression. Rick slammed on the accelerator, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He refused to look at that mirror again. He drove for an hour, his eyes locked on the road ahead, until the first lights of a small town appeared on the horizon. When he finally pulled into a brightly lit truck stop, he took a deep breath and forced himself to look. The reflection was gone. The passenger seat was empty. He never drove that stretch of Nevada at night again. The dark can play tricks on the mind, but sometimes the things we see and hear are all too real. Whether it's an intruder in the shadows, a strange figure on a desolate road, or an unexplainable presence just outside your window, these stories remind us that we're often more vulnerable than we think. Thank you for joining me for these chilling true tales. If you have a story you'd like to share, let me know in the comments. Sleep well, and don't forget to check your locks. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content. We'll see you in the next one.